Thank you, Darius, for taking the time to join us today. We're really excited to talk to you about a topic that I've kind of had in my mind for a while. It's our personality traits and how it makes us, or potentially makes us, more susceptible to social engineering attacks. We know through the threat landscape that social engineering plays a pivotal role in a lot of the recent attacks, in gaining entry into networks, moving laterally across networks, and being able to compromise systems. Since the outbreak of the pandemic, we also know through research that cybercrime has increased by 600%, and really the advent of social engineering and these threats are really what are compounding a lot of these attacks. And so we really want to dive into that topic today. We're excited to have you here. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I want to start this interview really getting to know you and who you are and what you do. And so right now you're the Information Systems Security Officer at Leidos or Leidos? I don't know.
Lidos, yes.
Leidos, okay. That's actually right within walking distance of the Vienna office.
All right.
Yeah, so I would love to know a little bit about what your role is and what it is that you do at Leidos.
All right. So I'm an ISSO, Information System Security Officer, which is a junior to mid-level governance and risk compliance position for the DoD. So what I do is ensure the network has the proper security posture. Create, maintain documentation, which is the system security plans or SSPs. And it's for the certification and accreditation for each system that I'm responsible for, that to ensure this in accordance with the government requirements. What I do is review the system to ensure that potential security weaknesses, and we recommend improvements to mitigate those vulnerabilities, and then document whatever those improvements are.
Great. And so can you tell me a little bit about how the role that you're in has, or the profession in general, has evolved over maybe the last 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so I looked at this question, and I can't really speak to the ISSO specifically because I've been active duty military for the past 20 years. And so I've only been in this role for a little over a year and a half. But what I can speak to is the information security space as a whole. And what I see is the intent to migrate away from defense in depth toward a zero trust strategy. So rather than working to keep attackers out of the network, we're assuming that an attacker is already in the network, and then doing our due diligence to find and remove those attackers.
Yeah, I see Josh is nodding his head right there. That's something we've talked about. I don't know how many times that's been brought up. Zero trust is just a framework and architecture moving forward in security. I think it's going to play a significant role. I know the Biden administration even came out with some information about what they want to do with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, taking a step back a little bit from this, what is it about security or your role that really gets you excited?
So I think what I like most is seeing the software and network security from this aspect rather than from the consumer aspect, which is what I was in the military. So we all have our systems to maintain and utilize to accomplish our mission. However, the software development lifecycle is done by a separate organization, generally by a defense contractor, which is what Leidos is. So the systems we utilize and maintain locally in the military are dependent on the things being done right by the defense contractors. So now that I'm in that space, I get to see how it works and see the work that goes into it, and take pride in doing the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so outside of security, tell us something fun about yourself. Are there any interests or hobbies?
Yeah, so I grew up in Alabama. So I'm a college football fanatic. Maybe less so in the last few years since I've kind of turned my full attention to cybersecurity. But yeah, I'm a Auburn Tiger fan through and through, not the one from the other side of the state. So yeah, as we like to say, I bleed orange and blue.
I gotta say, my entire family is all football fanatics. My dad, especially, is college football. Did not rub off on me at all. Sports in general, the football is with the ball, right? So, yeah. So yeah, great. No, appreciate the introduction about who you are and everything, and learning a little bit about your background. So let's really dive into the main focus of the conversation today. Um, so why are social engineering attacks on the rise, Darius?
Yeah, so uh, I think it's because people are susceptible to social engineering attacks. So it's seeking to take advantage of our tendencies. And so with that, we see it's much easier for an attacker to gain access to an organization through an employee. So, I mean, it's better for me to do that than to come up with a 0-day exploit, or it's a lot cheaper, right? So if I'm going to attack a company or an organization, I'm going to do it through the people first, the path of least resistance, to see what, if I can get someone to give me credentials, then I don't have to do much work. So I think that's why it's on the rise, and it's working. History says it's working.
That's very true.
So you said it makes it a lot easier for people to attack. What role does it really play in cybercrime?
The social engineering
Yes.
of that. So yeah, so it's because it's worked over the years, right? So the fact that it's easier to trick someone and provide credentials every day. If I send out an email and I can blast out an email to millions of people at one time, and all I need is 2 or 3 of those million to bite on that email. So I don't need to do a lot of work technically to get into an organization if I can just send out an email and blast it out to as many people as possible and get someone out there to click on the link in the email.
Right. So you talk about email. What are some of the other newer social engineering tactics that you see threat actors using these days?
So there are a few out there. I think I have 3 here that I'll talk about. One is the malicious QR code. Which is when you go to a restaurant, you see the little sign sitting on the table with the QR code there, and you're supposed to scan that QR code in order to get to the menu. And a legitimate QR code will take you to the website of that organization, and the menu will be presented to you. But because it's just sitting there on the table, anyone can put a QR code there. So a malicious attacker will replace that QR code with their own. And when you attempt to go to the menu, you're going to the malicious actor's website versus the organization's website. So that website may download malware as soon as you get there. So it may look exactly like the organization's menu, but as soon as you go to it, it's putting malware on your phone, and then they have access to your phone.
As soon as I saw that, I was wondering, like, man, how long is it going to take? I thought about it right away. I'm like, I could put anything I want on this table.
Right. So, and I think I posted about this on LinkedIn last week when I went out, and the first thing they did was hand us a badge and say, here's your badge for the night. You look on the back as a QR code, you scan it, it'll tell you about all our specials. And I was looking at it like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Right.
Conflicted. Use someone else's phone.
Right.
So yeah, and then another one is the push notifications. You'll see them on some websites, a banner at the top that'll say, click here now for notifications by email or SMS, and you'll sign up. So a malicious attacker will replace that banner with their own. And once you click on it, then it'll either spam you with a bunch of mail that you don't want, or some drive-by malware as well.
That's a good one. I hadn't heard of that one before. So,
yeah.
Cool.
I was
another
really suspicious of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, another one is a collaboration scam. I've heard about this being done to some researchers. Where a malicious actor will send an email to someone who does security research saying, hey, let's collaborate on a project. And if they respond to that email, then they'll receive an email with a link to some type of project document. And once they open that document, then that document will infect the system, and they'll have access to whatever they were working on on their own since they're already security researchers. And I was just telling Jason that I got one of these about a week ago. And it was a typical email with broken English, and it just straight out asked me if I want to collaborate on a business venture. And there was nothing else to it, no link, nothing else. It was a signature at the bottom, and I looked it up. I went through it and I looked at the email domain, and it was at se.df.gov.br. And yeah, it was something I hadn't seen before. I was like, I don't know what that is or where that could be. If it's made up, I don't know. And I looked it up, and it's a Brazilian government official in the Department of Education. So I assume someone had their email
compromised,
and they're trying to collaborate with me, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who's usually the target of social engineering organizations? Is it people such as yourself who serve these security positions?
So what I've seen is that it depends. It depends on what their goal is, what the malicious actor's goal is. So if they're looking to just gain credentials, then it may just be anyone in the company. But you will see a lot of times that an executive within that organization will be attacked because their information is out there the most. They're easy to find, so they're going to look to spearfish or whale one of the executives to gain their credentials, which is typically how business email compromise happens. So once they gain access to one of those high-level executives within the company, then they'll fish the regular employees to see if they can gain someone with system admin credentials, and then move to the network that way.
Right, because your boss is telling you, you need to do this, right? And you're
right.
not going to tell a CEO no.
Right. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I saw. I wrote about this in my class a couple of years ago about it's a school district that they were doing some work within that district, and they had collaboration with a construction company. The attackers they compromised the construction company's email, sent an email to the school district, say, hey, change your payment information to this account. And they proceeded to do that and lost millions just based on that business email compromise. So yeah.
Wow.
Ouch.
And do you see the same type of targeting towards executive assistants as a way to get to the executives?
I haven't specifically heard that, but I wouldn't say that that's not a thing. It makes sense, but I think because you see an executive's information just sitting on a website and public facing, the email address is sitting there, so they probably just rather go straight to them rather than going through an assistant.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So when we, moving towards the psychology of social engineering, how is social engineering related to it?
And so looking at the American Psychological Association's definition, they kind of look at psychology as the scientific study of the mind and behavior. And social engineering relies on human behavior in the way humans think. It takes advantage of our tendencies in decision making, and it is a direct correlation between psychology and susceptibility to social engineering attacks. If you think about it, marketing is a non-malicious version of social engineering. It attempts to appeal to our desires and what we think we like in order to get us to buy a product or use somebody's product, right? So in the military, we call it information operations. So it's the recognition that people react to certain things based on their environment. So if we can influence them to do something, we purposely plan it out and see what it would take to do that. Also, if you think about it, a politician, they're masters of social engineering, right? They thoroughly study their constituents to formulate the right messaging to get or keep their vote. So they know exactly what they want to say and to who they want to say it in order to keep that vote. So psychology is all about what makes people tick, and social engineering is the deliberate targeting of that human behavior and influencing someone to make a decision that they wouldn't normally make under different circumstances.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. My dad was a career Army man himself, and he always told me if he wanted to get someone to do something for you, it was called professional manipulation.
Yeah, yeah.
So when we look at, traditional big five personality traits, conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness, and extroversion, there's obviously a lot of different combinations. We were talking about that a little bit before.
Mhm.
And, what personality types in your mind are more vulnerable to social engineering?
So I was looking at some of the research that's out there on it, and I even looked at one of the links that you sent me, which was it was an interview with a research scientist. Her name was Dr. Cunningham, and they were doing some research on the Myers-Briggs. And what they came to was agreeableness and extroversion. Those were the people that were more vulnerable, just because agreeable people tend to be more willing to share information, and extroverts tend to be more transparent when they start talking. Right? So they're very open about what they do and who they are. So they're more susceptible to social engineering.
And on the flip side of that, which personality types or traits are more resilient?
And so that same Dr. Cunningham looked at they had conscientious people. They even joked saying that they were the type of people that read service agreements. So those are the kind of people that they're looking at it, and they're being more thorough with the things that they do and the decisions they make. So they're a little less susceptible. I also saw another study that said that those conscientious people sometimes are more susceptible to principles of authority. So, authoritative figure sends an email, kind of like we talked about with you compromise the executive's email. If they receive that email from that executive saying, do this, they'll be more likely to do it than from someone else.
Mm-hmm. And so, that's kind of a good point to bring up as we, the next question we're looking at was the human emotions and what human emotions do social engineering threat actors that are using social engineering primarily target?
So all of them. I mean, how much time do we have? So, right. So, a lot of times you'll see an attack, depending on how the conversation goes between the victim and the attacker. They'll kind of play on all of them depending on what they want. What I would say is greed is probably one of the biggest targets, especially since I just had a family member go through it, and I posted about it several weeks ago. The main reason for believing the scam was because the family member was blinded by greed. They felt that they needed money. Right? They felt like it was just had to have some money. And the scammers were right on time with their messaging. They came in, it was like, I want to offer you money. Mm-hmm. No strings attached, right? And as soon as they received the check, it was more than they initially promised, right? So the family member became a little skeptical and was like, why are you sending me so much money? We only talked about, a little bit. And they were like, well, don't worry about that. Just take what you want, and then you can send the rest to an orphanage. So it's a little play on sympathy, right? So I know how sympathetic you are because I've been watching you on social media. And so, you can send it to an orphanage of your choice. And the family member agreed. And as soon as the money was deposited, the bank was like, hey, this is not right. But when the money was moved, the scammers kind of took off with what they could get and left the family member there with about $2,000 worth of debt.
Wow, sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
That's rough. I do have to say, I love following you on LinkedIn. All of these stories that it's very focused on social engineering, and you talk about a variety of topics. But anyone out there listening, follow Darius. He's got a lot of great stuff out there.
Thanks.
And kind of speaking about social media, how much of a factor does that play into the success of these social engineering campaigns?
Yeah, so social media plays a large factor in the success because it's a treasure trove of intelligence gathering, right? So if I'm a malicious actor, I'm going on social media, I'm following you, I'm trying to be your friend because I want to know what you know, and I want to know everything about you. And people often share way too much information on social media. They show what they're eating, where they're going, what the pets' names are, and unfortunately, they'll use those same things to create passwords, right? So
Mhm.
that's the type of information that a malicious actor is looking for, and all of that is there for the taking on social media. So because they're tying those passwords, all they need is to get a nickname of a pet and they know your name, right? So they'll just blast a bunch of usernames that they think is associated with you, and then go at it with the passwords that they think may be also associated with the things that you post on social media.
Mhm.
So there's all kinds of ways that they can get you out there, really. So let's talk a little bit about prevention. What are some of the common best practices, to avoid falling victim to a social engineering attack?
So the biggest thing is just being aware, right? So that's kind of why I do the posts that I do on LinkedIn, is just to make people aware, because not everybody that I'm connected with is a cybersecurity expert. So maybe they don't know the things that I know. So I try to provide as much information as I can that I know about, especially of things that I've seen. Right. So then I'll just post about that because if people are aware of it, then they'll be more skeptical when they see it.
So how does that apply to businesses? Awareness, that's one part of security, but what else can businesses do to make sure that their staff is aware of these attacks?
So security awareness, right? So there's a program even SANS Institute provides security awareness training. And they put out a report every year on the maturity level of all security awareness organizations and how mature they are in their security awareness programs. So if you can at least take a look at that and see where you are compared to where, as an organization, compared to other organizations, and that'll help you at least in the starting place. But what tends to happen is people will do security awareness training as a yearly requirement, only as a matter of compliance, because regulations say you need to do it at least once a year. But that can't be the only time you do it, because research shows that people will tend to forget what they've learned within about 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Maybe even less, depending on what the content of your security awareness program was. So if you're not doing it at least quarterly, you're doing yourself a disservice in your organization.
Man, and nobody really wants to do it quarterly, right? So that's something you got to
Right.
in your org to do. Then
It is. But and I think also what people don't want to go through is the same mundane computer-based training or slides that they just get, some PowerPoint slides and say, just click through this. And so they'll just click through it and they won't pay attention to any of the information because I just did this a
boring,
year ago.
right?
I really don't care. Right. But if you, be engaging in your content, change it up, do it more than once a year, then it's on people's minds. So you also can do the phishing simulations. So at least people will get an idea of what it's like to be phished. So that when they see them, they'll know, okay, this doesn't look right. What do I do with this? So also make people aware that if you do receive something that looks skeptical, make them aware that you have the ability to report that email.
Right.
So a lot of people, if they do receive an email that they think is sketchy, they may just delete it and never report it. But it's better if you report it to the security team or the IT team, because then maybe they can take some actions in order to block wherever that's coming from on their end, and you won't even have to see it as an employee. So security awareness training, and then making people aware of the security controls that you have in place and why they're there, so that they understand why they have to do the training, why they have to report sketchy emails when they see them, why they have to remove their credentials or lock their computer when they walk away, that type of thing. So if you're making them aware constantly of that, then they'll be less likely to fall for social engineering attack.
So you mentioned quarterly training would be one positive change. So along with all these other, dynamic variables in social engineering and including the personality traits we've discussed, what are some other changes that need to be made to social engineering prevention training?
Other changes. So
because people get bored, right? So is there some way we could implement personality types in that? The simulations sound pretty good as well.
Yeah, so I've seen I've read things where there are programs where they'll act out things. So instead of having just computer-based training or PowerPoint slides, you do it live. So you bring everybody into one into a room, and kind of like they do at these conferences, these RSA conferences and things like that, where they'll do some type of demonstration on how weak your passwords are, to make you aware. So here, let me just show you how easy it is for me to crack your password. So just things like that to kind of make people say, oh, wow, I didn't know that was possible. I think if you're doing things like that, that's things that'll kind of catch the attention, and maybe they'll remember they'll remember it if they go through it, right? So if the things that you go through, you usually kind of hold on to. So just like the simulation, the phishing simulation, if you click on that email that the IT team sent, what's the consequences of that? So maybe that's more training, right? So as a matter of fact, I had a coworker who just received one 2 or 3 days ago, and she mentioned it to me in passing that she received an email, and I just kind of didn't think about it. And then I went and checked my email. I had the same email, and so I looked at it and I was like, okay, yeah, this looks really bad. So I hit report as phish, and I went back to that coworker and I was like, what did you do with that email you had? Oh, I clicked on it and IT said I'm in trouble and that I have to do more training. And I was like, I was hoping I could catch you before. Yeah.
Well, one thing to add to that, I've seen some recent research that suggests when you combine typical phishing emails with vishing, like phone phishing, that significantly increases the success rate of those campaigns. Because when you think about it, someone gets an email and they're like, okay, I'm going to write it off, archive it. But then you get a phone call and it says, hey, this is Jason with corporate office. We sent you that email. Did you get a chance to look at it? We really need you to fill in that documentation. Makes it feel like it's a little bit more legitimate.
True. Yeah, I think that's another part of the awareness is phone calls to organizations, because that happens as well. So someone will call and impersonate IT and say, hey, I need your password to upload this new software that we have. Can you log me in real quick and then I'll be out of your way? And and then someone can get in just as easy, right? So just making people, like what we talked about before, just making people aware of those things exist, and that you have to be very skeptical. You have, take a name. Let's see what your name is, and can you come to my desk if you want something, right? Since we're on the phone, I don't know who you are. Come see me, and then you can do what you need to do.
A little bit more challenging with work from home, though.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that probably plays into social engineering. We've had tons of success with that portion of pen testing. Usually somebody will give up something if you pretend to be IT on the phone because, hey, that printer's not working right, because printers are always broken.
Oh, yeah.
So, here, I need to remotely log in. Give me your password because this thing's not working. It's whatever your excuse is. So.
Right. And it's easy. That's the easiest way in, is through the people, right? So
let's talk about the future of social engineering a little bit.
It's here to stay.
Right. I mean, that was really my first question: is do you see it? Is it here to stay? So yes.
Right, yeah, like I don't see it going away. It's the easiest way in. So why change what works? Right.
Right.
So if I'm a malicious attacker, I'm going to continue to do the things that work. So if that's my easiest way in, I'm going to continue to do that because some people just don't care. Right. So they don't care about the security. So a malicious attacker will just, use that to their advantage. And sometimes that's just nothing you can do about that as an organization, that somebody just doesn't care. You can make them as aware as possible. So understanding that, you try to put in technical controls behind that, that first line defense of people, and then you put in technical controls behind that to say, all right, if they clicked on this email, what can I do technically that this doesn't go any further than this computer, or doesn't spread across the organization.
So you're talking about zero trust.
Exactly. So understanding that they may be there already, so you got to do what you have to do technically. Put whatever control you can to put it so that it stays within that environment only, and it doesn't spread across the organization.
Yeah, I think that's the answer to really a lot of the questions about the prevention and slowing it down, and how to prepare is it's zero trust. So let's go a little bit more speculative. How do you think technology will influence the evolution of social engineering attacks?
So I looked at this as, I believe that technology will make it easier maybe to bypass technical security controls. So just like we want to automate all of the mundane tasks that we do daily, I could see malicious actors looking at how to automate their attacks as well. So there are already tools out there that you can clone websites and create targeted emails and spoof email addresses and whatnot. So, I'm assuming at some point there'll be some type of technology out there that will allow them to bypass the things that are known that organizations use, like spam blockers and that type of thing, that'll allow them to bypass it. So I think as technology will evolve, we have to be creative as defenders to figure out how we keep attackers out, even when they come up with ways to bypass the technical controls we have in place.
That's that cybersecurity Cold War I talk about to Jason all the time. It's always an arms race, right?
It is. It absolutely is.
I don't know. You look at this last year. Is it a Cold War anymore?
It's a hot war. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
What's funny is, right, I hear that a lot, and I remember having this discussion. Read the book. I think it was Robert Clark. And it was Cyber War or something like that. I don't have to get the title of that book, but I read the book, and I had to do a report on that book, and it really talked about cyber war and this Cold War that we've been in for years already. That just kind of this has been getting worse and worse through the years. So now I think we're starting to see a lot more of that within this last 2 years. So it was, I think people are becoming more aware of it. Organizations are, as they become more aware of what's going on in their environment, I think, and the name and shame of the government having that going on, I think now we're starting to see more of the gist of what's actually happening and what's probably been going on for years, but now it's starting to get a light on it. So I think I read that book maybe in 2014, where they were talking about this and this whole name and shame thing in the government. He was recommending it as part of the strategy for policy. So naming and shaming says, hey, I caught you, China, doing this, and this is exactly what you did. So I think, and then kind of like we talked about with this organization with Kaseya that attacked Kaseya on the ransomware, it kind of disappeared, right? So that may have to do with that policy, that name and shame, that, hey, we know what's going on, we can see it, it's clear that this organization, so do something about it. That's the diplomatic way to go about it. I'm
Right.
That's a
sure
great
there's
point.
other things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, right? So that's the public things that the non-confidential things that you'll see that can be done to try to rein in some of these attacks.
It's all about trust, is what it sounds like. Honestly, it's. I mean, zero trust. It goes beyond the technical controls, then, right? Zero trust goes into this psychological control as well as don't
Absolutely,
don't
and
trust what you see.
yeah, and I think you definitely have to understand that not everyone in your organization works for the good, right? So maybe there's somebody in it
Insider threat, yeah.
that's doing something that they shouldn't be doing and they know it,
Right.
or just people make mistakes and then it's just those things you have to account for and do what you can to put controls in place should that happen. And one thing I'll say is disaster recovery plans. It's very important. So if you don't, so this backup plans that I think this ransomware is really highlighting that, right? So you lose your entire network. What do you do? Do you have another site you can go to keep running operations, right? Do you have other systems that you can rely on? Have you backed up your data? Have you checked the backup data? Does it work?
That's a big one. Is has your backup data been infected? I think some
Right.
organizations have seen that happens. They restore it, and they restored the malware. They restored the ransomware.
Right. Yeah, I saw someone posted something on LinkedIn. And there was a truck, big monster tires on the truck, and on the back of the truck it was the little small donut that comes on the back, and it was like backup plan, right? So did you check that tire? Because if you blow that one of those monster tires, you're not going to put that little donut on there, right?
That's
So
a great analogy for all of
funny.
that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That was really funny.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So preparation, and yeah, I mean, it with zero trust with BCPs, it really moves to the assumption of breach versus trying to prevent it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to go forward, right? Is to just think that you're going to be attacked, you're going to lose your data, you're going to lose your systems. So what do you do then? How do you
When, not
recover?
if.
Right? How do you recover from that? How long does that take? And you have to practice that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is how long does your business take to recover, and
right.
how do you know, right?
You have to practice it, right? In the military, we had a thing called jump talk. So we would practice if the enemy found our location, we have to get up and move, right? So that means we have to tear down all the systems that we have. We have to send someone ahead with some systems so they can get up and running, to get us back running while we continue to tear down the things that we have here and then move that stuff forward, right? So it's the same with the disaster recovery plan. So what systems can we remove now, put in a new site, and then break down the most critical systems and bring them in and then continue to run. And hopefully that time frame is very small versus the weeks and months that it's taking people to get back up and running from ransomware.
And that's the reason why the military creates some of the best cybersecurity professionals out there. It's 90% training, and
right.
for every single scenario. So just kind of wrapping up here in the conversation, is there any last thoughts or takeaways that you'd like to impart with for our audience?
Just like to say good luck to those fighting the good fight every day. Invest in your people, and remember, no matter who you are or where you are in life, you are a target for someone. So stay safe out there and be vigilant.
Great.
Awesome.
And Darius, how can people contact you? What's the best way?
The best way you'll find me on is LinkedIn. I'm there all the time. I'm checking and posting, and I don't really do much of the other social media platforms. So I do have a Facebook, but I'm not really on there that often. So LinkedIn is, if you want to find me, I'll be on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and it's great. You've been blowing up on that, so it's great to see that, and we really do appreciate your time for all of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it as well.